So, coming from The Guardian, I was accused of saying all white people are racist. This is what happened next. Oh, this is really delightful to read. The author is Jason Osamide Okundaye, the president of Cambridge University Student Union's Black and Minority Ethnic Campaign. In other words, one of the most privileged, spoiled brats on the planet who happens to believe he's oppressed and thus has carte blanche on hatred against anyone, but with no consequences. So with the risk of going too long in this video, let's read. Quote, Katie Hopkins and the Mail on Sunday, quickly followed by others in the mainstream media last weekend, picked up on tweets posted on my personal social media. The headlines made allegations that I believe all individual white people are racist, insinuating that I support violence against white people because of this. The newspapers claimed that I supported specific behavior from protesters in Dalston who lit bonfires and hurled petrol bombs at officers. There were reports, I believe, that white people had colonized Dalston. This is supposedly all the more shocking because I am a student at Cambridge University and president of its BME campaign. The Mail on Sunday quoted a Conservative MP, Bob Blackman, who said I should be persecuted for inciting racial hatred. These papers misconstrued the meaning of my tweets and stripped them of proper context. Much focus has been placed on my claim that all white people are racist. This had been pulled out of a discussion I was having in which I addressed how racism is often portrayed as the sole preserve of the working class and has been used to further stereotypes of working class people as uneducated and brutish, which I reject. I simply meant to observe that racial prejudice, where it exists, transcends gender, class, sexuality, and age. Hence my statement that white middle class, white working class, white men, white women, white gays, white children are racist, while rhetorically hyperbolic, was a clear reference to the fact that racism is not an exclusive characteristic of any one demographic. My experiences as a black gay man facing racism from white gay men have taught me this. Who the fuck do you think you're talking about, you blathering fool? So, you wanted to say that racism is not an exclusive characteristic of any one demographic, but somehow you actually said exactly that racism is an exclusive characteristic of white people. And we're supposed to feel sorry for your disdainful lot? Really? No, I actually think you've been treated much more kinder than you deserve. Why don't these people come to the intermarium to spout nonsense like this? I'd be glad to show them around how we treat his kind here. Not because he's black, mind you, but because he's a cunt. And cunts deserve to be treated like any other cunt. Going further with the article, quote, Cambridgeshire police swiftly dropped an investigation because they clearly saw what the press decided to ignore, that in no sense was this an incitement of racial hatred. No news organization that ran my story sought to clarify what my comments actually meant before publishing, close quote. I'm actually glad that the police dropped the investigation, not because I think you're not guilty. No, you definitely are guilty as fuck of inciting racial hatred. It's just that I don't believe those laws should exist. Now, only if we could have the same standard for white people too. Now that would be awesome. And as I explained in the Freedom of Association video, that can only be achieved by making an example of sorry lots like this one. On the other hand, I am thrilled that no news organization sought to clarify your comments because they don't deserve that. They're very clear and we can all read the English language, thank you very much. Besides, you accused white Britons of colonizing Dalston, and you seem to still not being able to realize how retarded that is. Which to me suggests that the only reason you're at Cambridge is because of the color of your skin and most definitely not because of your brains. But then again, Oxford. But then again, considering Oxford is the place which legitimately claims that not making eye contact is racist, maybe this is the new normal at the formerly esteemed institution of higher learning. Anyway, let's read further. Quote, newspapers decided to use a picture of me where I was frowning, perhaps playing into a repetitive media stereotype of the aggressive black man. Well, you are an aggressive black man, so what exactly is the problem? You're a militant racist who upholds violence against other people based on their race. And you are black, so an aggressive black man. What exactly is the issue? Quote, I was also reported as Cambridge's head of equality rather than an elected president of a campaign that advocates for the specific liberation issues of students of color. The discussion mentioned was tweeted separately to others in support of Dalston protesters, which reflected my continued support of those who seek justice in the face of inequality and, in some cases, brutality. Oh, fuck you with a 10-foot pole. And frankly, I sympathize with the media thinking you are the head of equality because A, most retarded nonsense like your own tends to come from that corner of any university, and B, the media mistakenly assume that generally students at such esteemed institutions are far more sensible and smart not to elect a militant racist like yourself for anything. Yes, the media was wrong, but I understand why. Anyway, let's skip a bit and go straight to where he whines. Those are the delicious tears. Quote, "The events of last weekend have led to significant personal consequences for myself and my family. I have received death threats, rape threats, and racist insults. My family, and especially my mother, is still dealing with the recent death of my father and have now had to face journalists doorstepping and harassing us. Some of these encounters with journalists have led to fictitious comments stated to have come from my mother and even a report of me being smacked. I was attacked as homophobic because of my observation that racism does exist in gay spaces, as has recently been explored in an episode of Queer Britain on BBC Three. To defend myself against such accusations, I'm having to come out in the national media as a gay man in full knowledge this had been information I had not yet chosen to disclose to relatives." Boo fucking who? Here's the thing. No sympathy whatsoever for the death threats and rape threats and whatever. None. You had no sympathy when you publicly upheld racially motivated violence against people who've done nothing wrong to you. So why should any normal person give two hoots over how traumatic your existence was in getting some consequences inflicted upon you for your consciously chosen behavior? Because you chose and still do choose to be a militant racist nutjob. And I'm sorry, but in the current year, militant racists tend to get nasty comments online. Tough luck. But then he goes into full hypocrisy mode. Quote, "The press often attacks members of the public, often with character attacks on students of color, as they believe that such people are unable to defend themselves. They are aware that this has an intimidating effect on other people who see the treatment and public takedown of those who are outspoken or politically active in ways the paper may disapprove of. Such attacks attempt to clamp down on the free speech of minorities and silence dissent. Tactics include distorting words and insinuating what cannot be proved, as well as publishing personal information and private, embarrassing, or unflattering photographs." What, you mean like what the media did to millennial woos? I'm sure you and your violent gang of militant racists applauded like the seals back when it happened to woos, which is precisely why I'm thrilled to see your own tactics used against you. In fact, I hope a lot more of this happens. I'd like to see a leftist a day doxed in the tabloids with their full quotes on display for everyone. Why? Because y'all totally deserve it. I mean, heck, Millennial Woos had his life turned upside down for a lot less than this, and also had no chance of defending himself in the pages of The Guardian, so please, spare me with the whining. And yes, these tactics do have an intimidating effect, which is why I hope to see a lot more of this used on you and your sorry lot of militant racists. Hopefully you'll get intimidated enough to go back to Nigeria or wherever you're originally from. At least there you won't be having white Britons colonizing your black space. And here's where it gets funny. Quote, "Finding ordinary members of the public whom they have selected for attack or ridicule is a core part of the press's modus operandi. The advantage of picking on relatively unknown people like myself is that our attitudes and actions can be selectively and misleadingly described with little fear that we have the public profile to fight back in the media or the money to challenge them in courts." Now look, kid, you can't have it both ways. You can't be an elected official of one of the most prestigious universities in the world and at the same time play the, oh, but I'm just an ordinary member of the public card. It doesn't work that way. If you had been a clerk at a supermarket, then yes, you would have had a reasonable case that you were unknown and the small fish and the media were unreasonable to pick on you. But that's not the case. You're representing Oxford. You were elected for that. So as a result, this comes with greater power and yes, greater responsibility. You don't like it? Resign your position, pack your bags, and go back to being an ordinary member of the public, preferably in your country of origin. This is a systemic problem with leftists of any stripe. They seem to lack the mental capacity of fathoming the concept of accountability. And I've gotten a lot worse than this guy since 2005 when I started to write and then podcasts and then this channel. Ever heard of me complaining about it? No, because I know that this comes with the territory. It doesn't matter whether I deserve it or not, it just is what it is. If you want to have opinions, you have to accept that others will have them too. Anyway, last paragraph, quote, "The events of last weekend have highlighted the dangers of speaking out, but more significantly the importance of speaking up for social justice, particularly from the perspective of a minority. Freedom of speech is viewed as a core value of British society, and this must extend to instances where it is criticized or called in for scrutiny. Without challenge and diversity of thought, there can be no progress." Oh, the irony. Now, while I genuinely believe that civilization will be better off without your particular diversity of thought, and I mean it, everyone would objectively be better off without the disdainful militant racism like these authors. But whilst I believe that, it is true that there can be no progress without diversity of thought. The problem is that this author should apply it to himself, because his diversity of thought has been totally normative virtually everywhere. And it is his diversity of thought that needs to be criticized, called in for scrutiny, and I would add, mocked mercilessly. It is people like this one that I would put on my list of loony leftists. I would have to have the resources to run an organization. I would really love it to have the resources to run an organization like SPLC that would hunt down this individual for at least a decade. Every time he tries to get employment anywhere, a torrent of letters, emails, and phone calls to arrive at that employer, letting the employer know that this is a militant racist that is unsafe for customers, particularly white customers. And if the employer doesn't heed, then have that employer's image purposely associated mercilessly with the face and the opinions of this disdainful helicopterable. Rinse and repeat for decades. Because until serious consequences are inflicted upon these people, they will never stop. But if serious consequences do come, via market means, mind you, the government should just stay the hell out of this, then the next generation will learn that being a militant, violent racist is not only morally bad, but also bad for business.